Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a 24-hour reading vlog. And I know you're shocked because I've literally never done this before. And I've actually tried it. I have never done it successfully because Christy Lewis and I have done a 24 and 48 a couple of times, but I don't think I've ever even achieved that. Essentially, I am in a slump right now. I really would like to get out of the slump, and I feel like the only way that that's going to happen is if I actually really dedicate time to reading and I make a concerted effort to read more. And so I'm in the middle of a couple of things, and I have kind of a free day tomorrow. So I feel like it's a great time to do a 24-hour readathon. I don't want to say it's going to be 24 hours straight because it absolutely is not. I was going to say I'm old and so I need to sleep, but you know what? Even when I was a teenager, I was not out here staying awake for 24 hours. It just was never happening. So I think this is really going to be more of a 24 and 48 or a 24 in a few days, kind of across the weekend. My thinking is that maybe I will just time myself and hope that my reading over the next few days equals 24 hours. The main thing that I am currently reading is Woman Eating by Kohda. And I picked this up thinking that this would get me out of the slump that I'm currently in. And it's really done absolutely nothing for me. Woman Eating is a book that I felt sure was going to be on the Woman's Prize. And so I'd been holding off on it thinking that maybe I would do a Woman's Prize reading vlog because I felt sure that I had actually read quite a few books that would wind up on the list last year. And then the list came out and it totally stunned me. And I think a lot of people were quite surprised by what they put on the list this year. Woman Eating is one that I actually just thought genuinely would be guaranteed. And it was not on the list, but this is kind of a literary horror, you might say, that is about a vampire who is living in London. And specifically, it is about a vampire who has an eating disorder and has disordered eating. And she really would rather be human, would rather be eating human food than consuming blood. And so that's kind of the baseline of the book. I think what I don't like about it is that it's just not the type of vampire that I like to read about, which is that she is just 23 and she hasn't lived a very long time at all. And for me, a vampire story needs to interrogate immortality and the passage of time. And frankly, just as a history nerd, that's the reason I truly love vampires, is I like to think about what they've lived through and how they can reflect on the past. She's younger than I am, so I really don't get much from the vampire part of it, from that aspect. To me, it is more about the consumption of blood and the relationship that she and her mother, who is also a vampire, have to food. And so this is an interesting kind of allegory and an interesting conversation about food, in my opinion. But I wish it was dealing more outright with the vampiric elements. I know this is a literary fiction, and I know that it was not by design going to be a stereotypical vampire book, but I think that's kind of my root issue with it. I also have just a real problem with the way the dialogue is written. I've enjoyed the description quite a bit, but to me, the dialogue has been just atrocious. It feels just so anxiety ridden for me. I actually get anxiety reading the dialogue because it is just so awkward that I feel like secondhand embarrassment for the characters whenever they're talking. It's just so odd and stilted and weird. And I'm sure that is the design of the book, because that's kind of the design of the character, as someone who's sheltered, who's never really gotten out much. I am almost halfway through it. It's a very short book. That's why I thought it might be a good way to trick myself out of going into a slump, but I really think I'm here. I'm currently watching a show that I am really invested in, and I kind of think that I need to close the door on that story to be able to get invested in another. So that's the book that I am currently in the middle of. I am also currently reading a collection of Horace's poetry. It might actually be the complete odes and epodes. And so that is one that I think I would also like to really finish in this 24-hour readathon. But that is simultaneously a fast read and also a slow read, because some poems I fly through and I have nothing to say. But some poems I really want to dig into and I really want context for, and so I'm doing research on the side. but I think I'm going to keep my TBR, aside from these two things that I want to finish, I think I'm going to keep my TBR pretty open. So tonight I am going to hang out with some friends, but I think I will go on and get started after we hang out. Good morning. I'm fresh out of bed, as I'm sure you can tell. But I did get in 2 hours of reading last night. In that time, I finished Woman Eating. And I have to say, just on the whole, this book was not for me. I feel really bad about it because I think maybe I expected something from the book that it was never going to give. I maybe thought the book was going to be something totally different, and it really was not. I think every time I thought something was going to happen and that the plot was going to move forward, nothing happened. There was an entire plot line about this main character who is a vampire, basically dealing with a creep at work. And I'm thinking throughout this entire situation, okay, you're a vampire, why don't you kill him? Even though she's by default just technically not a very good vampire. And I feel like at the end, things got stronger, but my gosh, for a short book, this just dragged. And I think it's because at every single opportunity for the book to become something more interesting, nothing happened. It would never take the opportunity to go there, to do something that would move the plot forward. And I just found that unfortunate. And I also just in general did not care for it at all. I will say I enjoyed the writing of this. I would be very curious to see what Kohda does next. But now that I have read it, I can see why the Women's Prize did not put it on the list. And so this was a big disappointment to me, probably one of my biggest disappointments of the year, just in terms of how much I thought I would love it. And I feel like I've been going through a phase of reading like unhinged women or like literary horror type things. And this one was easily the one that fell the flattest for me. I can see why people liked it, but I guess because I love vampires so much, I really thought it was just going to give me a lot that it did not give me. And so this was very disappointing to me, but I do feel great that I've gone ahead and finished something. I thought I would tell you, I do have a few books that are kind of up on the docket for me today. It is going to be raining. I see the clouds coming in as we speak. That's why the lighting is so terrible. The first thing that I want to share with you is this cute bookmark that I got in my Sticky Club subscription. This month I get Sticky Club, which is like a sticker subscription. But look at this little bookmark that they sent. Why is it so cute? And it's so like durable. So I'm going to use that today. In terms of books that I am just really excited about, books that I really want to read, I have Alone with You in the Ether. I don't know if this is going to be the one because I feel like it's going to be kind of a slow read because I'm definitely going to be highlighting things. And so I'm excited about this, but I feel tentative about it for a 24-hour readathon. I also have The God of Endings, which is another literary vampire book, and it kind of feels pertinent to me to go on and read this so that it can kind of be in conversation with Woman Eating in my head a little bit. And then we have The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, which is by S.A. Chakraborty or Shannon Chakraborty. And I love Shannon Chakraborty's writing because City of Brass, that City of Brass trilogy is probably my favorite fantasy trilogy of the past 10 years. It's just in general some of the best writing that I've seen, and she crafted such incredible characters in that series. So this is one that I think I might go with just because I think I need something a little bit pacey, but also some fun writing, and I'm really, really excited about this. A maybe for me. I know you're thinking, Jenny, what on earth? But this is The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 1. Will I get through this in a day? No. But this was one of my picks for March of the Mammoths. We're about halfway through the month now, and I realized that I haven't done anything with those choices because I've just been in such a slump, and I feel like last week in particular, I just did not read at all. And so I would like to get this started. I'm not going to say that I would like to make a whole lot of progress on this because I just don't think that's going to happen. So 2 hours are down. I've already finished something, and I feel really good about that. And so I will check in with you maybe when the next 2 hours are up. I feel like I'm probably not going to get to a full 24 hours over the next few days, but that's okay. The whole goal here is just to kind of claw our way up out of a slump. And so I think some contemporary fiction will help me with that. So I will check in with you later. I do have to film some videos today, so the day is not going to be I think, full of reading, but we'll see. Okay, so I started Alone with You in the Ether. And I know that's the one that I said I actually thought I probably wouldn't read, but I am now almost 100 pages in. Well, I'm only 60 pages in, but it's been, I think, an hour and a half. So we're almost down to 20 hours. But I've reached the second part of this, which felt like a really good time to update. And I am obsessed with it. I really am. I thought that I would be. I have thought from everything that people have said, specifically from the negative reviews of this, that I would probably really get on with it. And I really am. I will say this book kind of has an odd gimmick to the writing, which is that every now and again, like, somebody breaks in and pretends to be the narrator of the story and gives background to the characters. And now that we're in the second part, I don't think that's going to be as present anymore, but it's like giving stage directions, or it's as if you're reading the script for a television show where it's telling you descriptions of the characters. And I just think that's weird, and I can see why people did not get on with this because of the writing. But I think the writing is absolutely beautiful. I mean, I highlighted this. I have started highlighting it, and I haven't highlighted as much as what I thought, but this is literally in the prologue. With Reagan, everything came down to sacredness. She liked, in the time between docent tours, to wander her favorite parts of the Art Institute, which she typically selected to match the religiosity of her moods. Which was not to say she gravitated to religious art specifically. More often she aimed to match her private longings with the God, who was sometimes God, but not always, being worshipped through a polished frame. In early Catholic paintings, she looked for awe. In modern work, for sleekness, and contemporary, the vibrancy of dislocation. Deities themselves had changed over time, but the act of devotion had not. That was the torment of it, of art, and the perpetual idolatry of its creation. For every sensation Reagan could conjure, there was an artist who had beautifully suffered the same. Obsessed. But the characters are actually maybe not the most likable characters. They're maybe not the characters that you would want to root for. I think it's interesting that this is discussed as a romance, because actually the front cover of the book calls it just a love story. And I think the expectation of romance is that you're going to get a happy ending. And this is just called a love story. And I was watching Katie Coulson's vlog on this the other day where she read this in full, and she made that distinction, and it made her very, very worried about halfway through the book when she realized this was just kind of taglined a love story, not technically a romance. And so I'm kind of concerned too, but I'm not necessarily invested in these two characters getting together, because Reagan specifically is very unlikable, which means I'm enjoying her, of course, but I think it means that I am having a hard time rooting for the romance. Aldo is our main male character, and he has some oddities about him, but I think in a relatable way. I think, like, if you're in academia and you have been around people who you would say are very intelligent but maybe don't have the best social skills, I think that's something you come across in academia a lot. Is like someone is so book smart and they're so in the world of their research that when they're not talking about their research, they're kind of like not there. And that's the way Aldo is. And Aldo is more math-based, Aldo is more science-based, while Reagan, our main female character, is an art history person. And so, of course, I take to her a little bit more. But what's so interesting is Aldo's focus of research is on bees and hexagons, and basically how everything in the universe is connected through hexagons. It is fascinating. It is truly fascinating. And actually, I've learned quite a bit about bees. But I am really, really loving this. Really loving this. I'm also currently reading Atlas 6 with a friend. I'm buddy reading it with Svea, who used to have a channel on BookTube, but she does have a Bookstagram, so I will link to her Bookstagram down below. And I feel, interestingly enough, like this is a much tighter book than the Atlas 6. I'm enjoying the Atlas 6, but I feel like definitely parts of that have gone over my head while we've been buddy reading. And I feel like Svea has felt the same. But interestingly, I just feel like this is a much tighter book and a much tighter story. And I am just thoroughly enjoying it. I really, truly am. I did not think that I was going to take to something that is technically a contemporary romance. But one thing too, I do want to mention, if you want to get into this and you're more of a romance reader and you think you're really going to be invested in the two of them getting together, I think a subplot of this is going to be cheating. And I know that that's a deal breaker for a lot of people, so I just kind of want to make you aware of it. And to me, this whole thing operates in a similar way to a fantasy because it feels very dark academia in many ways and just in general academia. And so I feel like none of this is real, like how they interact as characters. It feels very symbolic to me. And so I don't necessarily have a problem with that component, but I definitely think it's going to be there. So I will check in with you later. I am obsessed with this. I think I might finish it today. Update time. I did film a video and then I ate a little something, so I'm actually not really clear on where I'm at with time. But I feel like it's been maybe another hour, so I feel like we're definitely under 20 hours left, and I am most certainly going to finish this book within the next hour because I am over halfway through it. It's a very short book. It's technically not even 300 pages. I am essentially coming on here at this late stage knowing that I have only a couple of parts left of this book just to basically tell you that I think it's going to get 5 stars from me because I am obsessed with the writing. And I'm so glad that I scheduled out this day to basically have nothing else to do but read because I really would not want to put this down if it were any other day. I mean, listen at this. You are not in love with Ronaldo Damiani, whose hair smells like Sunday morning in the sun. You do not even know him. He doesn't know you. You can rest your hands on the scars of his shoulders and long to rid him of every breath of pain, and still you will not be in love with him because this isn't love. Love is a home and a mortgage and the promise of permanence. Love is measured and paced, and this, the too hasty sprint of your pulse, that's drugs. You know drugs, don't you? Euphoria can be bottled. It can be smoked. It will dissolve on your tongue and burn through the vacant cavity of your empty chest. His hands on you, that can be preserved. It can be painted. It can be committed to the canvas of your imagination, and it can stay in the vaults of your private longings, your little reveries, your twisted dreams. So the book's going to get 5 stars for that alone, I think. Stunning writing. I am now incredibly invested in the two of them getting together. Incredibly invested, because to me, what is so, I guess maybe you would call it sexy about this as a romance is that they are attracted to each other's intelligence. It's all about how smart the other person is. And like, I finally found someone who understands the way I think. And that is so interesting to me. It is so much more than just general physical attraction, though they've talked about how attracted they are to each other. It's just like, I genuinely love the way your brain works, how you process information, how you can convey information to me. It is so interesting. I mean, it is so interesting. I am going to give it 5 stars. I feel very positively towards it right now, and I'm kind of scared about what the ending is going to be. I really, truly am, because I really think that this has the potential to go very sad here at the end. I really do. So I'm nervous, but I'm also very excited to see what this brings. I did it. I finished Alone with You in the Ether. It more than made up for the bad experience with Woman Eatings, frankly, because I rated it 5 stars, and I feel like everything I said in the last clip remained true. I will say, I do think on the whole, probably the second half of the book just wasn't as tight and wasn't as well done, but I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I really, really loved it. By the end, I was fully engaged in their romance, and it's just nice. I feel like it's been a very long time since I was emotionally invested in characters and in just in general the plot. It just feels like it's been a long time since I have been emotionally invested in something. So this was just really refreshing to me. I'm so glad that I read it, and I definitely finished it, I think, with just 6 hours of the 24 gone. So now I'm kind of open. I can look at my shelves. I might go with The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, just because I feel like a lot of people are talking about that right now, and I really want to read it before spoilers come out. You're probably just going to go on and guess that it is not the same day. And in fact, it's actually 2 days later. And essentially, I had to pause the 24-hour readathon for a wide variety of reasons. But in that time, I've achieved a lot. So I got a cinch for Christmas, and a cinch is basically a tool that will allow you to coil bind your own books, essentially like a spiral notebook. And I have really wanted to try that. And I cinched my own book this weekend that is entirely of wavy postcards. And I think it's really cute and I'm having fun decoing them. And that definitely ate into some of my time. We kind of moved over to spring decor. And also, I did finish my show that I was in the middle of. I know I mentioned that, and I know I mentioned that I feel like that's part of the reason I was in a slump and that I just wasn't getting attached to anything, is largely because I was so emotionally invested in those characters and in that story. And so I finished that, and I actually really do think that was part of it. And I'm glad that I finished it. I'm glad that I've kind of shut the door on that, but it was so good. It was so good. That was Island, which was a K-drama that's on Amazon. Obsessed, like just obsessed with specifically the main male character because it's just my brand. Like something like his character is always going to get me invested in a story, which is an immortal who's like alone and super tired. Like it's just always a vibe for me. And so I was essentially watching the show for him, but the rest of the show was really good because it was a fantasy show and it immediately made me want to move into fantasy mode. So I finished Alone with You in the Ether, and that was 5 stars. It was fantastic. And I thought that might also contribute semi to a slump, but I just think I'm picking them this year. I mean, knock on wood that this continues. I am in the middle of a book that I am absolutely obsessed with. It is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. Now, I know I said that I was kind of skeptical of this, and I think I also mentioned that I thought this probably would not be the next one to pick up in this 24-hour readathon that is now going to be spanning a week. But I am so glad that I picked this up. Part of me wishes I had waited and read this at the beach because I do feel like it's a very beachy book. This is essentially about a female pirate, but Shannon Chakraborty talked about this years ago when it was just an idea. She talked about it as kind of a take on Sinbad the Sailor, and that's basically what this is. It is set in a historical time period that I'm gonna guess is equivalent to maybe the Second Crusade. I always go into a pirate book with my expectations too high because Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite movies of all time and one of my first fixations. You know, I just was obsessed with it. And I always compare books to it because I often think when I'm reading a pirate book, if it's not giving me that vibe, if it's not giving me that swashbuckling atmosphere, why don't I just watch Pirates of the Caribbean? And so I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean the other day while I was cinching my book, and I just decided to pick this up. I said, this is going to be the one. This is giving me everything that I want out of a pirate book. It literally does feel like Pirates of the Caribbean in that kind of fun, swashbuckling sense and a classic sense. Also in terms of the world and how the supernatural elements have been folded in, I think it's really organic. I think it's just very interesting. And I was instantly attached to the characters, just instantly attached to the characters. And so I read for 3 more hours, I think, and I am almost halfway through this. I guess we're probably not going to make it to 24 hours in this vlog, but still, the ultimate goal to get out of a slump, I think that's going to be achieved. But this is fantastic. It might get 5 stars out of me. I feel like that's early praise. But this is also the first book in the trilogy, and I don't know why I thought this was a standalone, but I am really invested in it. I do think if you want to read this, like, I think it's going to be a fantastic book to read at the beach or to read in the summer, to read when it's really hot, because it definitely just has that vibe to it. I love our main character, and what I really love is that she is an older main character and she's kind of retired. That's essentially the setup for this book, is that she is a retired pirate who is coming out of retirement to help find some rich old woman's granddaughter. And that's basically all I will tell you. And so, like, she's had to hunt down her crew and get them involved again. I mean, it's literally the most fun I've had in ages. This is exactly what you want out of a pirate book. And finally, I have found one that I think scratches the itch I've always been looking for. And so I hope the momentum keeps up. I definitely think it's going to get a high rating from me. Right now, it feels like a favorite of the year. And I really am just shocked and awed that here in month 3, we've already had so many 5 stars for me. It's incredible. I will update you later. Maybe we will say we can cap this at 12 hours because I think I'm now at 8. And so maybe when I finish this, I definitely think I can finish this in 4 hours. I just don't think that'll all happen today by any stretch of the imagination, but I will definitely keep you updated. I am loving this. Well, a 24-hour readathon became a 12-hour readathon, I think, all told, and also lasted far longer than I anticipated. I really did want it to be just across a couple of days or even across the weekend, but it has certainly been, I think, almost a week at this point. And so that just goes to show, I guess, really how much time I can truly allot to reading per day. But also, I think a lot of it is accountability for me. If I don't have someone else doing this with me, I think I'm not holding myself accountable. And so I'm going off and doing other things that may need to be done and that maybe I want to do. But if the goal is to read a lot, and especially in a case where I'm clearly really loving the book, I think I probably should do this with someone else. On the other side of that, there's more pressure to me when you have to check in with someone, and that takes time away from the reading process for me. And it also means that I'm going to make myself do something even if I don't want to. And the mood reader in me, the Sagittarius in me, just balks at that. So I do think I'll do this again, and I think I'll try it again on my own, kind of spontaneously. But I did finish The Adventures of Amina Sirafi. Obsessed. And at this point, I kind of want to give it 5 stars, but part of me thinks that it's probably more of a 4-star read, which is fine. That's still really great. But I think part of me wants to know what the rest of the trilogy is going to be in order to judge this book. Because I certainly felt like City of Brass and the second book in that trilogy were 5 stars, incredible. And in fact, actually, I think Kingdom of Copper, the second book, is my favorite in the series and was better than the first to me. But the third book was kind of a letdown to me in such a way that I kind of soured a little bit on aspects of the entire series based on how it ended. And so I guess I feel kind of tentative here, and I felt tentative going into this book in particular because of that experience. And I'm probably definitely due for a reread of that series. I would love to reread that series now that I have read this. But Shannon Chakraborty's writing is just absolutely incredible. Her crafting of characters, I think in particular, is what I want to comment on because it's instant. You are instantly attached to these characters, both in this series and in her first series. And it's just insane to me how quickly we get a handle on their personalities, how well we come to know them as people within a paragraph so that we actually know their personality. We know how they would act in a given situation. I just think it's incredible. I think it's masterful. I also really was just fascinated by the world of this book. So this took place in our world, but definitely a version of our world with magic. So this is kind of historical fantasy, and I just eat that up. I love it. And I just personally loved the lore and kind of the conversation around what the plot was. I don't want to give it away, and maybe more specifically what the plot became, because the basic plot was her going to find some woman's granddaughter who had supposedly been kidnapped. But the story eventually evolved into something much more than that, of course. And I just thought it was fantastic. And I think a lot of what I really enjoyed was just the peeling back of the layers of the story and finding out more of the lore of the world. I mean, it was just fantastic. I'm giving it 5 stars. Who am I kidding? Who am I kidding? And it definitely did just give me Pirates of the Caribbean vibes. In fact, I felt Pirates of the Caribbean on a few pages here, and I could tell you specific references that were made. I could, because you're talking to a person here who was obsessed with Pirates of the Caribbean for at least 6 years of her life. And so I know every beat of those films. I can tell you every bit of lore in those films. And so I could tell that there were homages to Pirates of the Caribbean and also stuff, just kind of swashbuckling films like The Mummy. I just felt a lot of homage to that specifically. And that's kind of exactly what Sinbad the Sailor is as a story, which is what this is semi a retelling of. I wish I had waited to read it at the beach, but I think on the whole, I have to say the 24-hour readathon was a success because we got 2 5 stars out of this. The whole entire goal was to get out of a slump, and I think we achieved that. And so now I'm just really excited by other things that are on my shelf. So this was definitely a success for me. I would love to know down below if you have read any of the books that I read in today's vlog. And I would love to know if you've ever attempted a 24-hour readathon. If so, were you successful? But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.